But if I can correct you, traffic goes faster after having stopped for a stop sign than, that's what the studies have shown.
Okay.
And so so you get this oscillation where the peaks are higher after a stop sign than in the back.
And whether the same or higher, they are not recommended to control speed. They're recommended to control right of way. I think speed humps do control, especially if they're used in a series. So instead of just one, typically you would use depending on the length of the street, at least 3. So that traffic has to slow down, they may speed up a little bit, but they're not going to resume their previous or increase their previous speed, knowing that within 30 or 50 feet they're going to have to slow down again.
And Menlo Park has many streets, including Willow Road and Laurel and one along the tracks, I forget his name.
Orange.
And they have them in series. There are several of them, and they've been gradually adding them to more and more streets over the last 10 years. I bet there are more than 100 speed humps in Menlo Park. One point I'd like to make about doing this expeditiously if possible. The 2000-2008 effort started by the citizens in the fall of 2007. It took until March, I think, of 2008 to get the council, or to get the Transportation Committee to recommend the study to the council. It took until November of 2008 before the council took action and unanimously approved the study. And then by 2009, there was no money for it. So the whole process took a year and a half or more. And I would hope that rather than having to go back to square one again, there would be some way to take advantage of what's been done before and build on it, rather than starting from scratch again and maybe spending another year and a half and finding we're in another recession, so we have to stop the funding. So that would be my
Good, well, thank you very much. I think it's a very important issue, and it has been one that's been brought up and talked about, and nothing's ever really been done about it.
And the danger, as the gentleman with the children mentioned, and Greg Conlon mentioned, and Jack Brigham, what they've done in Atherton, and Gordon knows it, but it's not his fault, we've been overlaying these streets for 40 years. And you say there's no walking, no way to get across, no walking. That's just an offshoot of this whole speeding issue. But in front of my house, there's 4 or 5 layers like this. And the older properties are lower, and flooding, it comes into the drainage, and I've been flooded because of these streets. We just went through, as Gordon will tell us, this chip seal units that we put on last year, remember? And it was supposed to be done in 2 or 3 days. It took 40 days. It must have cost $300,000 or $400,000, Gordon, for that. How much was that?
It's about $200,000 for the
200,000.
whole program.
That's a few bucks.
200,000 for how large an area?
We do approximately 1/5 of the town.
But the next street over, Shelby Lane, they redid the street 2 years prior, and they took everything out. They excavated the street, and it's the way it should be, lower. It goes towards Shelby Lane School. But, I mean, that's something we couldn't do right now, but that's a major issue in Atherton regarding drainage, walking, and so on, is this overlay. Every time somebody thinks of a little pothole, they overlay.
I'd like to mention that Fair Oaks Lane, I understand, is scheduled for resurfacing in the fall of this year. And I would say that before proceeding with that, and I don't know how much that's going to add to the street height, that a longer range view should be taken, and I would rather forego resurfacing for a while if it could lead in another year or two to doing the job right and shaving the street down and rebuilding it.
So maybe your mayor can tell us what we could do to sort of speed this along.
That's a good question. Well, first of all, you've got a lot of moving parts where conditions obviously throughout the town has changed over a period of time. We've started this, ended this, started this, ended this. Traffic studies are supposed to dictate current flow. The police department's had multiple changes over the duration of your period of time. Even in the last year, we just now got up to speed with having 2 motors out there in order to do some enforcement. And the first step, I think, in this particular situation on Fair Oaks is to ask the chief if we can, and I know that I'm sure we're already out there, but just put some attention on Fair Oaks to see what we have going on related to numbers. The issues related to trying to, I mean, speed bumps are a big grenade, and they're a big grenade because we don't have any. And we're talking about a major street that we have. We have several issues that you've heard some of the residents say. We have some visibility issues, and that's something that Public Works should go out and take a look at and see if we have some impact, some overgrown shrubbery that can make the visibility in each direction better. And that's a step in the right direction, and that can happen right away. The police department can start the enforcement side of it to see if we can get a reduction in speeds. Now that we have 2 motor units, we can have more effective enforcement. That's one of the biggest demands that we have town-wide, is traffic enforcement. Your street is a major street for the flow of traffic going east and west. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. If in fact we put a block, cut your street off at the end at Middlefield, they're just gonna go to Watkins. So we have that, obviously, to consider as well. The conditions of the roadway, clearly, I'm sure Gordon will say the same thing. Grinding the street down is one thing, and resurfacing it is another. But we obviously have conditions where we're getting a buildup on our shoulder area, so that's something that we'll have to take a look at and see if we can look at some improvement. I think you had mentioned the curbs on Atherton Avenue. Those are valley gutters, and maybe that's something that we can look at to hopefully help us do off-roadway areas. Maybe some increased signage can help. I mean, these are all ways that we can try to do some reductions in speeds. What we haven't talked about is those people that are doing 45 miles an hour and hit one of those speed, not bumps, but humps.
If they hit a speed hump, they'll know it.
And so will
Right now, they don't know it because they don't get a ticket or nothing negative happens to them.
I agree, but when you hit a speed hump at 45 miles an hour, nobody's gonna wanna be in front of where that speed hump is. And so those cars usually go in a direction you don't wanna see them, which anybody on the east and west side or north to south side of it are gonna say, I don't want the speed hump in front of me. I mean, that's.
You mean because of noise issues?
No, because what happens when you hit one of those speed humps at 45 miles per hour, and if you got somebody that's not paying attention, so there's a lot of things that we have to look at town-wide.
Can
And
you just clarify what exactly happens? They're thrown off the road, or it makes a loud sound?
they often get thrown off the road, they often go in a direction it makes it unfortunately dangerous, more dangerous for people that are potentially walking on the side of the roadway, or the houses that they potentially could go flying into. Fortunately, we have larger parcels, so direct influence of a house, but you're surely gonna see fencing and so on and so forth. So people that don't become aware that we have it, and it is a major roadway, they'll, that's a factor that we have to look at.
Could you elaborate on that a little bit, because I'm not familiar with people flying off the roads from humps. And sometimes people go around them.
No, what happens, and this is not the first time that this topic has been brought, that I've had something like this in front of me as a community. So it's something that police department and engineers will come back and say, if obviously we're not familiar with having a speed hump and somebody's traveling 45 miles per hour, well, you hit it at 25 and see what it is. I mean, it definitely gets your attention. I think, Jack, you mentioned, you'll know it's there. I mean,
Not if you're going the speed limit.
even at the speed limit, you will be aware that you're going over a speed hump, period. It's not like driving on a flat surface.
Right.
So, but add 20 miles an hour to that. So your car is not going to react in the same manner it does. It will most likely be in the air, depending on the size of the speed hump. So that's just,
On the other hand, they're widely used in Menlo Park. And
I'm not here advocating either side. I'm saying these are all things that we have to take into consideration if these are something that we consider. Size of the hump, duration, educating the public. We have to get, you're saying that we haven't done anything. And what I'm saying is that we have to get some steps in place so that we can get reductions, see what the numbers are. I'm not saying no
Get
against speed
reductions.
humps. It seems like you guys want to think that I'm against speed humps. I'm not against speed humps.
I'm just trying to understand.
I'm saying to you, and if you've traveled in Menlo Park and you hit, not that I have ever done more than the actual speed hump and the speed hump, but if you actually hit that speed hump at a higher rate of speed, you will see that your car does not act in that same manner. Say it's a truck that's going in at a higher rate of speed, so there's gonna be somebody that, boom, a truck, a vehicle that takes a longer distance to stop if you hit that speed bump at the wrong speed. So it's not,
So, but
again,
you're arguing this is why it takes time.
it takes time, because we have to look at it. We can't just go out and plug things in the roadway tomorrow and say, hey, well, they're there, and this traffic's gonna be reduced.
Well,
I
actually,
know
with
that
with this technology, we could.
you can,
One
but-
thing I just,
Right.
makes sense to me is there would be implications to doing it. So,
Right.
let's say we put in speed humps, I'm thinking perhaps maybe we put them in, we'd study, see what happens. But I am thinking of immediately, Watkins, I assume, is gonna feel that. If you got people who are in a big hurry to get from one to the other, they're gonna go there. And I'm not, I don't know how we,
Watkins, at least there's not the same line.
No, I agree, but I'm sure people who live on Watkins should be heard in the process, and, we should be aware of the
But
implications
we're
on
not
there.
gonna not act on this in Fair Oaks because people at Watkins might want it.
No, that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying we gotta make sure that.
And Gary, that's not what I'm saying, and I'm not saying doing anything.
Point of
I'm saying
order.
that there are steps that we have to go through. We don't have a magic wand, we're not gonna be putting speed bumps on Fair Oaks tomorrow. I mean, that's just reality. There is a process that we
What are the
have to go
steps
through.
that we need to go through?
So you guys have to address, this is obviously something that we just got 7 days ago. So there's, what we were hearing about it.
And people have to understand one of the reasons things takes long is something called the Brown Act. And we're not actually able to make any decisions or
Right.
recommendations on this tonight because this is the first time it's come up. We meet again in 2 months.
And we're not allowed to meet except as a full committee, properly noticed to the public. Otherwise, we are in violation of that.
You could have a
Right.
meeting on 3 days' notice if you chose to do so.
I don't
You
know.
could have a special meeting on 3 days' notice and vote to do something.
Well, you can, yes. There are ways of having special meetings, but on the other hand, probably we couldn't get a quorum if we tried to do something 3 days
I'll
from
be
now.
in Philadelphia. But anyway.
It's just a process question, though. It does seem that there's probably specific steps we could be taking so that we're not in the same situation in a year
And
or 2 years.
And sympathize with the fact that they've been at it for.
Or 30,
Yeah.
I agree completely.
And again, Jack, this hasn't been before this group. And so therefore, this is new to them.
It's been before the institution of the council.
And I understand that, and it wasn't me that tabled it, and it was all pre-me, so for the record, it was pre-me, we didn't have this, so this group, matter of fact, hasn't had this. And I know that calling a special meeting, we're relying that everything that you've provided us is also true. So again, we have to have staff actually take a look at everything that we've had and look at what our current records are, and then bring it back to this group, so this group can say, and the police chief has an opportunity to speak related to this, and look and research and see what the conditions are related to accidents and so on and so forth. There was a process, and I know, again, we don't have a magic wand on this side of the bench. We can't, even if a decision was coming back around in 3 days, it would then go right back to staff, right back to the chief. The incremental step is to have the chief look into it, have Public Works start looking in to see what we can do
So
related to shrubberies.
can we recommend that they do that?
It's already done. I saw Gordon write it down, the chief wrote it down, and it's in motion, so.
So at our next meeting, that will be a main agenda item.
Right. So it's not, again, I know, I get the frustration. There's a lot of other streets that have similar frustration, maybe not the duration of stuff that you have, Selby Lane, et cetera, et cetera. So we understand, and we wish we had the money, and I'm sure, and when it was originally done, and when you came back to them. But something happened, we weren't there. We'll try to work on seeing if we can help, try to work on a problem. And that's what I would suggest.
So just, excuse my ignorance, then is it feasible to make it an agenda item for the meeting which is currently scheduled for 2 months from now? And could these steps have happened between now and 2 months from now, or do they take longer than 2 months to
So
complete?
staff can start looking at this now,
Okay,
being Public Works and Police.
okay,
And they will come back at the next meeting when it's an agenda item and tell us what their